Here's the video on how to do a math blog. First of all, let me talk about the schedule. At the beginning, it might be a lot to take in, so I'm going to go through it step by step. So the first thing I did here was I showed a sequence of classes. So the first class, second class, third class, fourth class, and then there's some events that happen after that. So in the first class that has to do with the blog is in the mock exam class. Usually right after the mock exam, if we're on campus, I give you the blog sheet so that you can start taking a look at it right away if you want to. Okay. The next class after that, I would be giving you 45 minutes to work on the blog. This doesn't always happen right afterwards. Maybe it's like on the day of the exam, or maybe it's after the exam. It just depends on how the schedule works out. Class number 3, so the class after that, the blog would be due at the beginning of class. So like if I give you work time for the blog, then the following class it should be due at the beginning of class, because the idea is that you finish working on it during the 45 minutes or you finish it up as homework. Let's say that class number 3 is your exam. Then I don't want to make it due on the day of the exam. So if class number 3 is the exam, then the blog would be due at the beginning of class number 4 instead. Okay? So those are the rules I use to do the sequence of blog due dates and things like that. So you can kind of figure it out yourself most of the time, but I will usually tell you in class. On Schoology, usually what I do is I put the day that we're going to work on the blog in Schoology, not the day it's due. Okay. So on the day that it is due, it should be due at the beginning of class. So anytime after the beginning of class, I reserve the right to already give you a 0 if you haven't submitted it yet. Okay. And so I will be checking sometime between the time that it's due and the end of the school day and putting zeros in PowerSchool to let you know that you did not submit your blog. If I have time, I will also send out emails, but I might not have time. If you do part of the blog, some people try to be sneaky and just do 2 options instead of 3. Some people do like the first question of the blog and don't do anything else. Sometimes I might give you like an email that says, well, part of your blog is going to be counted as a 0, which will end up being late if you submit it later. If you submit like 2 out of 3 options, the third option will be considered a 0 until you submit it, and then it will be considered late. So I will count part of the blog late if you only do part of the blog upon initial submission. I won't grade it with feedback until the weekend after, because it's quite a long process to grade a whole class of blogs. Usually it takes me a few hours. So I will be doing that like Saturday and Sunday after the day that you turn it in. Then I will give you a grade out of 48, and I will give you specific feedback comments which will enable you to fix it or to improve it to some extent. Okay? If you did a pretty good job on it, the comments I give you is feedback enough for you to get 100%. If you did a bad job on it, then maybe the feedback is not specific enough to get you to 100%. If you only do half the blog, my feedback might be finish it, and that doesn't really help you. It's not really specific to help you improve your blog, right? Okay. After that weekend, you have the feedback in hand. Monday through Friday, after that feedback is given, then you can do corrections. There's no specific class time given for corrections, but any class you would like to use for corrections and ask me questions, you may. Just do your classwork ahead of time or something so that you can still take the quiz at the end of class when we're on campus. Friday at midnight after feedback is given, so that's about 5 or 6 days of that you are allowed to do corrections, you will submit the corrections. And that weekend I will grade the corrected version and give you your final grade, which can be as high as 100%. You may not do corrections late. Corrections are a courtesy I'm extending to you, and it's not something I'm required to do, and so I am not going to consider your corrections unless they're done according to the schedule that I've given you. Okay, you may turn in blogs late, but you may not turn in blog corrections late. So if you turn in a blog super late, then obviously you're not going to have the opportunity to correct it. Like if you turn it in after the correction deadline, then there's no corrections, right? Okay, now I'm going to talk about how to actually do a blog. So what does a blog sheet look like? A blog sheet looks exactly like a mock exam, except instead of the reflection space that's on the right side, what you're going to have are blog options, which are 1 to 3 questions about the problem that's at the left. Okay, so this is the blog sheet. It looks like the mock exam, but it says blog at the top and it's got these questions here. I'll give it to you sometime after you actually do the mock exam. Since it's based on the mock exam, I will never give it to you before the mock exam because you have to do the mock exam and treat it as an exam before you reflect on it, okay? So the blog is basically a way to reflect upon the mock exam, but like tying it to all the concepts you've learned during the unit. You are going to choose 3 of the blog options to do for your blog. There's probably like 5 to 10 to choose from. And when we're on campus, I will help you choose the right ones by circling the ones that you should choose or crossing out ones that I don't think you should do. I do that to try to push you to do ones that will actually help you. Okay? During online class, I won't be doing that step because it requires me to actually be in the same room with you. It's too hard to do with online class. When you're starting your blog, you go to your blogger.com account, which you've already created a math blog, and at the math blog you're going to do plus new post, and that'll open up a new sheet for you to do your math blog on. You're going to put on that sheet all 3 options on the same sheet. Okay, so at the top you're going to title it whatever the unit name is probably the best thing. Some people put like unit 1, unit 2. I don't think that's very descriptive. It makes it hard to go back and look at stuff. Put a word which describes the unit, such as probability. Okay. When you put images on your blog, which is most of what you put on your blog, always use the insert image icon and don't do a copy and paste into the editing window. A lot of times when you do copy and paste in the editing window, your image gets corrupted. It may look fine to you, but if you go to the public view of your blog, it's just a broken image icon. Okay, and so that's a good way to create extra work for yourself, to get zeros where you don't deserve a 0, etc. So make sure you use the insert image option always. So whenever you do a blog option, you should put a heading saying which blog option it is, if it's not obvious already. If you put the blog option with the number there, like here, option 4, then it's obvious. But sometimes, like a lot of times people forget to put the blog option, and they also don't have a title, and I have no idea which blog option they're working on. I need to sit there for 2 minutes trying to figure out which option it is, and that'll put me in a bad mood for grading your blog, which you probably don't want. Okay, so here is an example of what you put into a blog option, and you just do this 3 times because you're going to choose 3 blog options for each blog. So at the top you're going to put the reference problem. So the problem that was to the left of the blog option is the problem that's the reference problem. Okay, so you're going to put either the whole problem, or you're at least going to go to the section which the blog option is referring to. And if you can't figure that out, basically it's the part that's about at the same position, vertical position, as the option. And if you really can't figure it out, just put in the whole problem. Okay, then you put the blog option prompt, and so you put the whole thing here. Okay, and then then you put your answers, okay? And what I think is the best thing to do is to write your answers out with a pen or pencil. Pen if you don't write very dark with pencil. And you take a photo of it and then put the image by doing insert image. The reason why it's better to do that is because there's a lot of stuff in math that's hard to type, like look at these exponents here. That's kind of a pain to type. It's going to take you more time. You're not getting anything out of it. You're not getting a better grade for typing it. In fact, a lot of people get worse grades because they type it because of all the problems that happen when you type it. So I prefer that you handwrite your blog and just take a photo of it, okay? So if you have a calculator procedure in your response, you must always include calculator screenshots. The virtual calculator is a great way to get good screenshots, but you can take photos of your calculator also. You should always narrate your steps. Like, do you see how here they say step 1, and then they have a photo of step 1 happening on the calculator? When you do algebra or math operations, same thing. You shouldn't just do a bunch of math operations without any kind of narration. Here you can see you can put little phrases, arrows, indicating what you're doing to make it so that the person reading it can learn from your blog, okay? It's not just for me to check your answer. In fact, that is not the purpose at all. It's for you to show that you understand how to do it and explain to your future self how to do it. These blogs will be reference material for you when you study the unit 2 years after you've done it for the exam. Okay, so basically you do that sequence for each option, so that happens 3 times on a blog. You can make videos, but just to warn you, videos are hard to correct, right? You make a 2-minute video, it's like, oh yay, I finished my blog option. You have a mistake right in the middle of it. It's like it's really awkward to fix that, okay? So that's a disadvantage of doing videos. When you do videos, I will take off points if you put the video sideways. If you are going to do a video, make sure you put it on YouTube and link to it. YouTube is a site which has no problems with long videos, with high resolution videos, with videos that take up a lot of storage space. Blogger.com, on the other hand, is not good at storing videos. A lot of times when people put their video on Blogger, it has problems, okay? And you're going to lose points for that. So take my advice, put it on YouTube and link to it from Blogger. A lot of people like to do Google Doc blogs, and that's fine, but the Google Doc needs to be shared with the entire world, otherwise it's not really a blog, right? The other thing is that if you are going to send me to a Google Doc, there should be a link which I click on your original blog to go to the Google Doc, and if it's not clickable, I'm going to take off a point for that too. If you insist on typing the blog, you may, but the reason why a lot of cohorts don't end up typing the blog for the whole 2 years is along the way there's plagiarism, which often happens because typing blogs makes it easy to copy and paste. And whenever there's a plagiarism incident in a cohort, I will ban typed blogs for the rest of the 2 years. So typically cohorts lose the right to do typing in the first semester already, because usually there's already plagiarism, and then that's the end of it, okay? Common blog errors. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of stuff here, but some of it is repeated from stuff I already tell you in other places, so I'm only going to look at the highlights, and you should read through this at your leisure and make sure you understand all the common problems and errors that people do. Usually these errors result in zeros. They might result in deductions, so be careful not to do it. If you do these errors in the first version, then you might have a possibility of fixing it, but if you already know that it's wrong, try not to do it on the first version and make both of our lives easier. So it's very common for people to have really bad photos or images, putting them in sideways, blurry, too small to read. Those are all either I take points off directly, or I can't give you points because I can't read it, so that's going to hurt your grade. one of the reasons why typing your blog is so inconvenient is there's a lot of notation in math that is difficult to type, such as exponents. Sometimes people get lazy and they use the circumflex or caret to indicate an exponent. That is something that you will lose points for on the IA, and anything you lose points for on the IA, I also deduct points on the blog. So if you use circumflex or caret to indicate an exponent, that would be a point off. A lot of times when you're typing math, you use the slash instead of a vertical fraction. A lot of people can't correctly use parentheses, and that induces math errors that you wouldn't normally make if you were writing it out. So another case where typing causes low grades, okay? And if you don't know what I'm talking about here, then you could talk to me about it later, or just don't do it, okay? Don't use slash. It just makes math harder. Okay, so that's it for the common errors. Please read through those at your leisure. So let's talk about the rubric. So here's, first of all, a lot of people like to have exemplars. If you want to look at an exemplar, here's one that I consider really good, but like everybody's blog looks kind of different, so it's kind of misleading to look at one blog and say, oh, that's what mine should look like, okay? If you lose your blog sheet, and which is not going to happen on online class because I'm giving you a link to it, but if you lose the paper and on campus and you want the paper and you have a printer at home, you can go to the School as a Unit folder and reprint it, okay? It's together with the problem set and other things. I'm just going to look at the highlights again because some of this stuff is repeated, okay? So first thing under submissions and grading and resubmission is you need to submit the blog at the beginning of class, after the class you were given class time to do it. And my philosophy is that by the time we get to the class following the class where you were given time to do it, your blog should be done already, right? It should have been done during the class I gave you time to work on it, as long as you use the time wisely, or maybe you had a little bit of that you needed to finish up afterwards, which is fine, but you should have it done at the beginning of class where it's due, okay? If you are working on it during the class that it's due on campus, then I'll know that it's late and I will mark it late immediately, okay? So don't be working on it the day it's due because it should have been done at the beginning of class. Okay, and I already covered that. Next page. So the blog is summative, so that means it is possible to submit it late. Remember the late rules. So you lose 10% of the points if you turn it in from 0 to 3 school days late. These are school days, not class days. So the day that you don't go to class is also counted as one of the days. So out of 48 points, that would be 4.8 points you lose off the top. If you can still, even if it's more than 3 days late, you can still turn it in late as long as the next unit has not finished, okay? So I don't think that 2 or 3 weeks late that should be exceeded, okay? And so like if we've already started the next unit, then I'm not going to accept it anymore, okay? So now if you do turn it in more than 3 school days late, it's going to be a deduction of 24 points off the top. So that's really not a good use of your time to be working on blogs that late, because you're going to be like doing all this work to get 100% and you're going to get an F, right? You're going to get 24 out of 48. So just turn it in at most 3 days late, okay? Remember, the time machine can be used, but the time machine only reduces the lateness by 24 hours. So if you turn in 1 day late, you can get it so that there's no late penalty if you use the time machine. If you turn it in 4 days late, you can reduce that back to 3 days late, okay? But if it's 5 days late, even the time machine can't make it 3 days late, right? It can only make it 4 days late. So if you are doing your first submission and you're submitting it late, and it's so late that I've already graded the rest of the cohorts, then you're in danger of not getting it graded during that weekend at all, which means you will not get your feedback, which means you don't have feedback to do corrections, which means you can do corrections if you want to, but I'm just not going to give you written feedback for it. Okay? All right. So, like I said, the blog is 48 points. So, since there's 3 options, each option is worth 16. Okay? How is the 16 points or 48 points broken up? 50% of the points is math. 25% of the points are like format, and 25% of the points are math language. Okay, so I take off the points according to the criterion that is being violated. These criterion roughly correspond to the IA criterion, so this writing is to get you used to writing the math IA. Okay, the math IA is worth 20% of your IB grade. In a regular semester, the blogs compose 20% of your EAC grade. Okay, I'm just going through the highlights here. The way you explain the problem should be written at a level that one of your classmates who hasn't studied the unit yet could understand. Okay, so should be sufficiently detailed and written in a sufficiently easy way. Okay, no prize for writing in a high-handed way. Let's see. If you like are missing explanations for the TI-84, I might take it off in math, and or I might take it off in format, but I won't take it off in both. Okay. Whenever you use an equation from the formula sheet, you should present it before you do the substitution. Okay, that's good to do on the exam. You definitely have to do that on the IA, and it's good to do that in your blog. It makes it easier to understand, and if you make an error in the substitution, people will understand what error you made, or they'll have a chance of understanding it. And when I say people, I mean principally me who's grading it. Okay, format. So for format, communication, originality, citations criterion, I don't mind if you use images or a little bit of work from a website if you think it's like particularly good for explaining something, but the principal explanation should be you writing it in your own words. Okay, if you use a diagram or something from a website, you do need to cite it by saying where you got it from. Those are points off if you don't do either of those. Remember that you always need to cite the reference problem. You need to show the reference problem from the mock exam, and you need to insert the blog option text with the questions. Okay, if you don't do those, then it will be taken off in format. You should neatly write it or type it, but if your cohort has been caught plagiarizing at any point during the 2 years, from that point on, you must handwrite it and not type it. If you type it from that point on, you will lose all your format points. Okay. Math language. So this is more easily followed if you do handwriting. If you do typing, then there's a lot more errors you could have, which we talked about previously. So there's not too much to highlight here. We kind of already talked about it. Okay, so take a look at these explanations of what's in the each criterion, so you know where I'm going to take points off. But if you don't remember it, that's okay, because I'm the one that has to know where to take points off. Okay, and I think that's pretty much it. Okay. Okay, so yeah, computer notation, that's something I take off for in math language. Computer notation meaning caret for exponents, or asterisk for multiplication. When you write down math calculations, a tendency for people who are typing, they like write it on a paragraph and they bury the equations in a paragraph. I would take off for that because whenever you do math calculations, it should be top down. You should write it vertically. So you do one calculation, you follow it underneath. You don't like stick it in a big paragraph. Here is just something that I've already talked about to you, which is my 4-point scale, how that works. Okay, I think that's it. Yeah, that's the end.